Hi, everyone. Hello, everyone. Flora, can you confirm me that we are online on Facebook?
Yes, we are online. Please go on.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Flora. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the press conference concluding 2 intense days of work of the conference Externalization of Borders, Consequences for Freedom of Movement in Africa and Right to Asylum, a polycentric approach against delocalization. The conference took place in Abuja, Rome, and Tunis, and was broadcast on Zoom. The conference was organized by ASGI, the Network of University Legal Aid Institution, Nigeria, Avocats and Frontières, Tunisia, and the Cairo Institute for Human Rights Studies. During the last years, the evolution of repressing European delocalization and border control delegation policies has had a major impact on the limitation of freedom of movement of African citizens and their access to the right of asylum. The new Pact on Asylum and Migration confirms and strengthens this European approach to the external dimension of migration management. Cooperation with transit countries is increasingly important to implement the strategy of externalizing the right to asylum. In fact, the new pact provides for procedures that exclude the admission of asylum applications submitted by asylum seekers who have transited through third country considered as safe third country or first countries of asylum. The readmission agreements and the agreements and funding of programs for border control are fundamental steps in the construction of the European strategies, as well as the projects aiming at tracing the mobility, thanks to the collection of personal data through biometric control systems. The new Pact on Asylum and Migration, What is the impact of the new pact in African countries? How does the European strategies fit in the political and economic agenda of African states? Which violation results from the implementation of these policies? Which are the tools for identifying the legal responsibility and challenging the resulting violation? During the conference, experts, lawyers, organizations, and researchers discussed the new challenges put in place by EU and African countries, limiting the right of people on the move, and defined transnational strategies to tackle the violation of rights. First of all, the right to asylum and to free movement, stemming from these policies. Today, we are glad to present you a first result of this common work, a statement defining the commitment of the organizations who participate in the conference. I leave now the floor to Odilaji from NULAI that will read to us the first statement containing the results of our work. Thank you very much. The word is to you, Odi.
Good afternoon, everybody. On 19, 20, and 21 May 2021, 4 human rights organizations, ASGI, NULAI Nigeria, ASF, and CIHRS organized an international conference on the subject of border externalization policies, consequences on mobility in Africa, and on the right to asylum. During the conference, which took place simultaneously in Abuja, Roma, and Tunis, as well as in Libya, the organizations, in collaboration with panelists and experts from Italy, Libya, Tunisia, and Nigeria, reflected on how to develop transnational strategies to fight against externalization policies. The following are the main conclusions of the joint reasoning developed during the conference. As outlined repeatedly by rights organizations, the European Union and European member states' externalization policies severely restrict the freedom of movement of African countries, of African citizens, and as a result constitute a serious obstacle to the fundamental right to asylum. European externalization policies are part of a broader global migration management strategy, in which reinforcement of borders, security policies, rushed expulsions, and delocalization of border control play a central role. As part of this strategy, European and African states, EU agencies, and a number of international institutions, intergovernmental agencies, private companies, and non-governmental organizations all intervene in building up and defining systems to control and manage mobility. In that regard, human rights organizations have observed that externalization policies are also taking advantage of the humanitarian mandate of international institutions and NGOs. And the tight link between development actions and migration management in Tunisia, Libya, and Nigeria. This work, which aimed at mitigating the effects of externalization policies, has become an important source of legitimization and implementation of these same policies. The new part on asylum and migration has confirmed and reinforced a European approach that aims to confine the processes of selecting and determining the legal status of persons on the move outside the territory of the Union. This confinement takes place through cooperation with countries of origin and transit of migration flows, and through the development of a legal fiction of non-entry in transit areas of EU territory. As the conference was underway, media reports announced the possibility of the European Union concluding a new externalization agreement with Libya, according to which the Libyan government will prevent migrants from departing Libya and arriving in Italy by strengthening the operational capacity of the Libyan Coast Guard. On 20 May, EU Commissioner for Home Affairs, Via Johansson, and Italian Minister of Interior, Luciana Lamorgese, traveled to Tunisia to reinforce the country's joint maritime border control system. This worrying situation makes it necessary to develop new litigation strategies to identify the legal responsibilities of the different actors involved in migrants and refugee rights violation. To this end, it is essential to disseminate lessons learned from the litigation and rights protection action put in place by the organizers of the conference. It is also necessary to strengthen and expand the litigation strategies that can be developed through transnational networks for the defense and promotion of migrant rights and refugee rights. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Odilaji. And the statement, the document that Odi just read will be concluded with a commitment from the four organizations to continue a joint work to cooperate jointly in addressing, contrasting and challenging externalization policies. I will now leave the floor one by one to different experts from the different countries that will present how we develop and decline during the conference and during the workshop that were held at the end of every day, the different issues. So I will start by giving the floor to Karim Salem from the Cairo Institute for Human Rights Studies. Thank you very much, Karim.
Thank you.
Sorry, Karim, there is a little connection issue. We cannot hear you perfectly.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Perfect. Je suis très content de participer.
Sorry, Karim, we are not able to hear you perfectly. I will leave the floor to the next speaker, and I will kindly ask you to try and resolve this connection issue. So I will leave now the floor to Luce Bonzano from ASGI that will talk about the second point on our commitment. Thank you very much, Luce.
Thank you. The second point we underlined was the challenging of the bilateral agreements and the UA financial support for the implementation of border control and migration management aiming at containing human mobility. As we saw in these last days, the bilateral agreement that has been subscribed until now between some country of the UA and some country of the African continent are one of the most strength and the effective instruments to contain the human mobility and to stop basically or try to stop the flow from the migrants coming from Africa. So it's very important that as a civil society and organization, we put our effort in trying to contrast this instrument and basically exactly because they are one of the most strength and useful instruments that have been taking place until now, we need to find new way of challenging this system. And the first and the most important point we need to attack and stress is the total secrecy about the content of these agreements and about the utilization of the fund given by the European Union to the countries like Tunisia, Libya, especially as we saw, but many others. We are seeing now the agreements between Spain and Morocco, the agreements between Spain, Mauritania, and Senegal. These are the use of these agreements and the fund given by the European states has important consequence, not just in the movement of the migrants and in the compression of the right of asylum, but as we saw in the last days, also in the affecting the general geopolitical situation of this country and even in the specific situation of their citizens. We have just to think about the agreement we did with Turkey that has empowered a lot Erdogan and these activities against the civil society in Turkey. So this is absolutely something we have to try to challenge and fight, especially, and we need the support of all the organizations in the territory and in the member states to find a way to leave the secrecy about these agreements and to make the people and the citizen, even from the country like Tunisia, Morocco, Mauritania, aware of the consequence of the utilization of this fund in their particular territory and not just in the situation of the migrants. So one of our main issue and aim as a civil society and association is try to challenge and fight this kind of instrument.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Luce. I saw that Karim tried to reconnect. Karim, can you hear us? Would you? Yeah, okay.
Très bien. Est-ce que vous m'entendez?
Karim, yeah, we don't hear you really good.
Là, c'est mieux?
Oui, c'est mieux. Karim, can you make your intervention in English if it's not a problem for you?
Yes, sure.
Thank
Sure.
you very much.
Thank you, and thanks for all the organizers for this important conference. This is a start point to work together on the specific area of priorities that we define together. From a perception on Libya, especially, we think, and all countries, African countries, which are in the similar situations, that it's very important as well to support defender and civil society from the country, as in Libya, people working on migrants, supporting migrant or monitoring the state management of the migration are very difficult in Libya. Defender and civil society are restricted, facing problem from and restriction from the executive as well, the armed group and militias acting as the security sector in Libya. As well, we agreed that it's important to continue in a coordinated way on the documentation, the support of migrant in the different countries they go through it, through our network, to work together on accountability through as well creative way. And it's important in some contexts where we have opportunities, as in Libya, on the criminal court, and as well as the fact-finding mission by the Human Rights Council, to use these mechanisms to reinforce accountability on every person, entity, or group who were implicated in violation of migrant in the country, or pushing them back to be subject of violation. So the sanction mechanism, as the Magnitsky Act in US used as well in the UK, but also in the EU, there is a new human rights sanction mechanism. It will be good to use it as a way of reinforcing the accountability. We also aiming to use more the universal jurisdiction as a way to ensure every person implicated in violations that there is he or she will not be safe in any country, that we will be working that these perpetrators be held responsible. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Karim. I will now leave the floor to our colleagues in Tunisia, especially to Zainab Mrouki from Avocats and Frontières, the coordinators of project of Avocats and Frontières Tunis. And she will talk about the next 2 points of our common statement and common commitment. Thank you very much, Zainab.
Hello. Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here today. So my intervention will be about two specific points. First of all, my name is Zainab, and I'm project coordinator for Avocats sans Frontières. So, as I said, two specific points will be on my intervention. First of all, I will address the violation of the right to asylum stemming from the application of summary asylum procedure, facilitating the readmission of asylum seeker in transit countries as a result of the abusive application of the concepts of safe third country and country of first asylum. So these violations are a direct result of the rapid readmission and expulsion of Tunisians based on the abusive application of the concepts of safe third country and country of first asylum. Since 2019, the Italian government considers that Tunisia is a safe country. Therefore, the citizens of this country are not entitled to international protection and are deported massively. This mass migration is intensifying from month to month until yesterday with the visit of the Italian Minister of Interior, the second one in this year, which comes to conclude another agreement of these repatriation, while on the other hand, there is no repatriation agreement on the horizons for the environmental scandal of Italian waste that threatens the lives of environment of millions of Tunisian citizens. According to the Italian law, a request might be a national of a so-called safe country can be considered massively unfounded if no evidence is provided of the insecurity of the country of origin or the state of personal danger. Although, in principle, in all cases, the application must be examined and the possibility of a personal interview must also be granted. It seems, however, that in the absence of evidence of the specific dangerous situation of the citizens, a decision is taken based on the lack of grounds for his claims for protection very quickly and without guaranteeing the protection seeker a personal interview. This is contrary to European law and constitutes a violation of the fundamental right to seek international protection. And the refugee law, the possibility of accessing a form of international protection is guaranteed on the basis of an individual examination of the personal circumstances that led the person to immigrate. The possibility does not apply in any cases on the basis of nationality. The denial of the right to access international protection and consequently the forced return to a situation of danger for the migrant can lead in the cases provided for by the law to the violation of the principle of non-refoulement among others, which is one of the foundation of refugee law. Now, the duration of the immigration process is considerably reduced, the lesser than a month. These accelerated procedures are a violation of their fundamental rights, including the universal rights to defense. Often Tunisian nationals are returned before having had a proper legal interview and refunded on no basis or legal order. Now, the second point that we want to point is the urge for the publication of the return agreements to allow the evaluation of their legality, especially in relation to the impact of their application on the fundamental rights of foreign citizens. As Tunisian citizens, we do not know the content of these agreements signed between two governments without any legality control from the Tunisian parliament, which is the legislative body. In addition to the violation previously mentioned, these agreements remain purely security agreements that strengthen the security management of migration. Millions of euros are provided to strengthen the hand of migrants in the sea. The goal is simple: to detect the boats as soon as possible in order to alert the Tunisian authorities so that they can take lead on the maritime interceptions themselves. Millions of euros are spent to strengthen a brutal police system responsible for huge violation on the citizens of its citizens, in accused of acts of torture, which sometimes the reason for the departure of these people. To conclude, we as civil society want to alert on the consequences of this model of massive and secure migration adopted by the two countries, Italy and Tunisia, on the fundamental rights of the citizens of the South, and we call to urge for the immediate publication of these bilateral agreements in order to be submitted to a control of legality, demand the respect of the rights of asylum and the freedom of movement for everyone, to end these massive deportations based on the concept safe country of origin and not based upon the personal conditions with of the nationals as foreseen in the international conventions, and finally call for the responsibility of the Tunisian state to respect the fundamental rights of its citizens. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Merci.
Thank you very much, Zainab. I will give you now immediately the floor to our colleagues in Nigeria that will bring the attention to the next 2 points of the statement.
Okay, good morning.
I leave the floor, to Odi or Ibrahim. Sorry, to Mariam Abdul Kadir from Nile University. Thank you very much, Mariam.
Thank you, Adelaide. Good morning. The next point is committing to legally monitor the activities of humanitarian actors, such as international institutions and NGOs, and then to that legitimate externalization policies and to promote legal actions to ensure their accountability for fundamental rights violation. Now, humanitarian actors play a key role in migration. At most points or every point in the migration process, you find international institutions or NGOs, and they are crucial because they are, permit me to use the word, they are the practitioners there. Even if the government is not present there, you will find international institutions or NGOs, whether local NGOs or international NGOs. So it is quite important to monitor their activities, especially in the area where they legitimize externalization policies. And then another key point here is that we're committing to promote legal actions. This will ensure their accountability for fundamental rights violations. We have identified that there are a lot of violations on fundamental rights of victims, and once legal actions are taken, it is believed that it will ensure that they are accountable for those fundamental violations. And when I say, I mean the humanitarian actors that play a key role in most of the process, whether it is during the journey or at the country of transit, or even at the country of destination, and even in repatriation and integration process. So the key thing here is to monitor their activities and ensure that they become accountable. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much, Mariam. My name is Ibrahim Mukhtar from Nile University. The next point is committing to monitor free trade agreements between African countries, especially within the ECOWAS, and between EU and African countries, such as the EU Deep and Comprehensive Free Trade Agreement, that is DCFTA, and to also highlight the ways in which it limits freedom of movement and economic activities and encourage human trafficking. As we know, in the post-colonial era, EU and its member states that were former colonial masters, I would say, to some of the African countries, have consistently used economic cooperation agreements to establish trading and economic activities between the countries, and which in most cases favor the former colonialists. We have seen example of this, especially in the current trend towards the adoption of the economic partnership agreements with ECOWAS countries. And we have seen that also in the DCFTA with Tunisia, which has received so much condemnation from within Tunisia itself and across the continent because of its colonial or neo-colonial tune. And we see this as a way of continuation of subjugation of the African countries and increasing the widening gap between the two economies, and then at the same time exacerbating the push and pull factors that are causes for migration, which in turn encourage violation of human rights, and then at the same time also human trafficking. So these are issues of concern which we have discussed, and civil society researchers would continue to monitor with rapt attention these developments across African countries and devise ways to make sure that some of these agreements are not imposed on the countries at the expense of the poor citizens of these countries, and also are not used, as we know, as vehicles for transporting the EU externalization agenda within the African continent. And so we'll continue to monitor these developments and ensure that necessary steps are taken to address some of the effects through advocacy, legal challenges, and also through continued cooperation with partners from within Africa and also from Europe. So basically, this is the commitment we make with regard to this point. Thank you very much. Over to you, Advisor.
Thank you very much, Ibrahim and Mariam. I will now leave the floor to Lucia Gennari from ASGI that will present us the last point of the common statement. Thank you.
Thank you. Does it work? Yeah. Okay, so the last point concerns challenging the collection of personal data and the misuse of biometric control systems affecting the right to freedom, the freedom of movement and the right to asylum. So during the conference, we analyzed the fundamental role played by biometric controls and the tracing of movement even outside European territory, and how this is functional specifically concerning the implementation of the EU Pact on Migration in order to return and readmit foreign citizens to the countries of origins and of transit also. This is maybe a more subtle strategy which affects are not like immediately visible as other parts of the externalization strategy. And it's made through, for example, the concept of smart border, which use technologies concerning the control of mobility based on the collection and storage and then exchange of personal data. So, for example, the use of databases, which is highly facilitated, for example, by the new regulation, not so new now, Frontex regulation, to mention one of the interventions that were made today. Another tool which shows all the ambiguity of this strategy concerns the civil registration and the strengthening of civil registration systems in African countries. So we see that this is also, so I mentioned, I think here about birth registration, the release of identity documents, specifically with electronic containing biometric data. So here we see all the ambiguity I was saying of the use of this instrument, because it's true that it can be functional to the access of rights, like, for example, welfare, but also at the same time, it can be misused for the control of mobility, even in areas where there is like special freedom of circulation, and also to restrict the access to rights. And here I think, for example, to the control of the circulation of information, so the freedom of information and of press, but also when it comes to the exchange of personal data here, we immediately think of the possibility of the protection of data coming from asylum seekers or former asylum seekers. So here we see the intrinsic connection or the contradiction which is entailed in externalization policies, not to mention the colonial nature of these policies, because they bring together both like control policies and so-called development policies. So our commitment here would be to continue monitoring what happens in terms of the dynamics, in terms of the actors involved. So who is collecting, where, when, all these important amount of data, and which can be the infringement of fundamental rights of people controlled also through these means. Establish responsibilities, and here we include, of course, not only state responsibility, but also international organization responsibilities. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Lucia. With Lucia, we concluded the presentation of the different points of the different commitment that the organizers, that the 4 organizations together with some of the participants and of the panelists took together. And I wanted just to, before passing to the question, that we already have some question from from the Facebook chat and from the Zoom. I just wanted to remind you that this document presenting the results of the conference and of the common work and common reflection will be published today after this press conference. And this will be just a first step, and the organizations that are involved are committing also to build together a roadmap to keep working and keep making this platform of strategic subject and civil society organization from Africa and Europe working and be ready to contrast these policies. Okay. We are passing now to the question. I already have a few questions. The first one that arrived through Zoom was about was a question we also heard during the different presentation, how the work of humanitarian actors can be in a way tricky, because it can be also used as an instrument for the implementation of externalization policies and the legitimation of such policies. We were asked how to, a question to NGO, to how to maintain an independent agenda from the donors, especially when working in a difficult situation in countries where their role could be instrumentalized. We asked one of the participants of this conference, that is Lodovico Mariani from the Italian NGO Un Ponte Per, to give us feedback on this question and to let us also understand how they are reacting to this. Thank you, Lodovico.
Thank you very much. Good morning to all of you. No, good afternoon now. As UPP, Un Ponte Per, we are not actually working in this area, but I mean, we are working in Iraq since 30 years. So let's say that we have quite a good experience in what means to seek for independence. That is really a challenge for any international NGO working. And we know that the risk of not working for our agenda, but for others' agenda is always there on the ground. And we have to take this risk anytime. But in some context, the only thing that we can do is something that sometimes is difficult, that is just to say no. Meaning to challenge donors that are putting a lot of money on the tables. No? And so this is sometimes really difficult, because then you are thinking about salaries and structures and colleagues, but you really have to go out of the cages in which sometimes we are. For example, in these days, there is this forum, and why I am one of the few coming from NGOs that is sitting here. And I think that this is something that we will have to do all together, to create something a little bit bigger. So to have in our agenda what is in the agenda of, for example, of ASGI and of all the other organizations that are doing this work, and to act together. So as before Salvatore was mentioning, that we have to challenge not governments, but UNs, because UNs, we can, if we work all together, we can have them to change their agenda, and so to then be stronger in doing something that is relevant. And the last thing, because I don't want to take too many time, is that one of the things that all the humanitarian NGOs are saying in these days is localization. It's always in every document we are writing. We have the courage to really do it. That means to give the power to the organization on the ground and to work with them. This is one of the reasons for which nowadays is really difficult to work in Libya, because most of the time international NGOs are not in contact with the grassroots organization on the ground. And that will be the challenge, to spot these organizations, sustain them, and work really together with them. and not granting them. So really, but I think that the biggest thing is to work all together, so to challenge UNs and sometimes to say no to governments when they put money in agenda that is not our agenda. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ludovico, for your feedback. Of course, we know that also in Nigeria and Tunisia, there are some participants that are from NGOs, so feel free just to let me know if someone of the participants want to give a feedback on this central issue. In the while, we have another question for the Libyan colleagues. The question comes from Azizou Chehou from the organization Alarm from Sahara. Azizou, we wanted him to present it directly. He was connected on Zoom, but I'm not seeing him connected anymore. So maybe he lost his connection and is listening to us on Zoom. Okay, no, I don't. Unfortunately, I don't find him. So I would just ask directly the question to our colleague Karim Salem from the Cairo Institute. Okay, can you find him? Sorry, we are seeing if we can find Chehou. No, okay. I think his connection went down. He's listening to us on Facebook. So I will ask on behalf of Chehou Azizou to Karim Salem. The question is how it is possible to consolidate the relationship between Alarm from Sahara and Libyan civil society organization regarding border externalization policies. The floor is yours, Karim.
Thank you, Diletta. So yes, we will be, as Cairo Institute, we will be very happy to facilitate this collaboration with Alarm Phone. Referring to this question and the question before, so Libyan civil society are new after the revolution. It was totally closed public space where civil society can't work at all. So now they are working, but with the challenge of armed group and the executive restrictions. So we'll be very, very happy to collaborate with Alarm Phone on exchanging data on the network in the south of Libya, on the working on implicated in human trafficking and implicated in violation, as well as in the operation in pushback. And on the question of funding, it's I support my colleague and his answer, and it's important that as a group of civil society be aware of this, and that we together enforce these decision makers to review the agenda for the as donors, because these funds come from the taxpayers in Europe, and these persons should be aware that they have the responsibility and could be held responsible even by the legislative authorities in the different countries about how they define this way of spending and how they ensure that this way of spending are not reinforcing and even indirectly violation. So it's important as well to boycott when it's like this oriented, and to push with civil society together to advocate at different level on donors to change these agenda which are not reflected the need on the ground. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Karim, for your intervention. We had an input from our colleagues in Nigeria, I leave the floor to Odi or Ibrahim to collect this input.
Okay, we are okay. The question has been answered.
Sorry.
I said we are okay here.
Okay.
No more input. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Odi. So I invite everyone that would like to give also online input or feedback of what have been presented to write to us on Facebook or on Zoom. And I would just like to take one moment to state again the importance of the work that we are trying to build, and also give one point on the work of ASGI project Shabaka Euruka, that was at the base of the construction of this of the network, and gave us the opportunity to also enter in contact with the organizations that organized the conference together with us. And of course, I wanted to also add that although the 2 days of work were at closed doors, so just among the experts, we will publish the proceedings of the conference in the next weeks, because we think it's important to share and give the opportunity also to everyone that is interested in developing further, or also coming in contact with one of us to continue this work. I'm just checking also with my colleagues if there are if there are questions. Okay, we have one question that is probably from our colleagues from Tunisia, Libya, and Nigeria. So I will just present it, and then you let me know who would like to answer to that. Is about the collaboration with the Red Cross and Red Crescent associations. Francesca Cappuccino is asking us if in the different countries we collaborate with these associations, since they're present in both Europe and Africa. Let me know if you want Odi to give us input on that, or Martina and Zainab. I don't think that we, okay, so Mariam, I think wants to intervene.
Yes. I believe the question is if there is any collaboration with Red Cross and Red Crescent societies. Well, for us here in Nigeria and Africa, there is an enormous amount of collaboration with, especially the International Committee of the Red Cross, the ICRC. The speech I gave yesterday, most of the points I made are reports from the ICRC that are here on ground. They are the guardians of international humanitarian law. So because of the various insecurities happening across Africa, they have a huge presence here. They try as much as possible to give humanitarian assistance, even for migrants that find themselves in situations of armed conflict. One of the key examples that I can give, the role that ICRC has played here at home is they were the organization that helped us to actually evacuate the released Chibok girls. They were the only ones that the insurgency relied on or agreed in their negotiations with the government to release the girls too. So the ICRC was able to get the girls, give them enough humanitarian assistance, and reunite them with their families. And so yes, there's a huge presence of the Red Cross and Red Crescent societies in Africa. And they don't just collaborate with government, they also collaborate with other institutions like the universities. I know as much as possible the Red Crescent and the Red Crescent societies make sure that they go to universities to promote and disseminate the knowledge of IHL and other international laws, and they make it a point to educate people on humanitarian aid and assistance. So to answer her question, yes, they collaborate on various levels with government and other key institutions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mariam, for giving us feedback on that. I think that there are no more questions from the audience and the participants. So let us know if there are other inputs. Otherwise, we can move to the conclusion of this press conference. I remind you that we will publish this document as soon as we finish the event. I would like to underline that what was presented today and what we worked on during these 2 days of work. Oh, okay. We have, I just would like to read you this message that is a thank you from Mrs. Maya Salifadel, that is the Commissioner for the Rights of Refugee and Migrants of the African Commission for people, human and people rights. I would like. Okay, thank you very much, Maya, for your participation in this conference, and your presence was very important for us, and we really hope that with this network of organization we will be able to get in contact with you. Okay, just we go toward the conclusions, and as I was saying, we saw that the complexity. We saw a huge complexity, of course, of the delocalization and externalization policies, and that a joint work is necessary. That's why we would like to give again the floor to Odi Lagi from NULAI that will conclude this event. Thank you, Odi.
So it is with great pleasure for us here in Nigeria to have been part of this conference. And on behalf of ASGI, NULAI Nigeria, Avocats and Frontières, Cairo Institute for Human Rights Studies, on behalf of all the organizations and the experts and the stakeholders that had made their time to come and brainstorm and spend these 3 days leaving so many things behind. We are excited to be moving forward, I think, with a stronger coalition, and I think our cooperation is strengthened, and we are appreciative of all the persons that participated in the conference online. We believe they contributed richly to the conference, also to helping us understand the huge, immense interest in this area. We understand that externalization of borders, the consequences for free movement in Africa, and the right to asylum is an important area of international humanitarian law and international law because of the way events are unfolding globally. I mean, with the example of COVID-19 pandemic, we begin to understand that there is a need for more synergy across the globe, because we need to be able to know that whenever there is any situation in the country or across the globe, that fundamental human rights will not be suppressed, that we do not go back to the era before the First World War and the Second World War. We do not go back to the era before the United Nations was established, that instead we continue to push that fundamental rights and freedoms are for everybody, that everybody, every person on earth is entitled to it. And under no circumstances should those violations be, should there be any sort of violations. So we're excited to move forward. We're excited to open up the network, to build more strategy, to meet again, and by then to have accomplished much more than we did today. And we look forward to also meeting everybody online. We encourage you, if you should see the newsletter coming out and the publications, to read and encourage people who are also interested in the field to get involved and participate. I think this is a call to action, and I encourage everybody to part of it. Thank you, and God bless.